Hello, my friends. Um, it's been a while. Yeah, I think 2 weeks now. This is the longest between videos I think I've ever allowed to happen since I was doing these full time last September, October. Um, so this is just going to be like an update and checking in. Nothing major, no reviews per se, and just some scattered thoughts. And yeah, so I guess let me get into it. I'm just going to wing this here. Um, so the last couple weeks have been kind of, they've been kind of rough in that I've had some severe physical pain. I have carpal tunnel, so I'm wearing these, as a lady friend of mine says, gauntlets on both hands. It was just yesterday that the pain started to subside to a significant degree. And I'm going to return to work at my day job, I guess, tomorrow. Yes. My eBay is doing pretty good. The link is below it. Please check it out. If you'd like, please consider donating to my PayPal to help me keep this channel going, and or being a channel patron and providing review materials. That all having been said, I guess the highlights, well, the big highlight of my last 2 weeks, I can't really go into yet. I don't want to jinx it, but it's something that's developing that will be profound, and if all goes well, it will be the greatest decision of my life, the greatest happenstance that I've been fortunate enough to stumble into. So, enough said about that. When everything is cemented, I'll definitely report it here proudly and happily. So, other than that big event and my being ill, my big, I guess the highlights of my last 2 weeks have been 2 weekends in a row. Weekend before last, there was a general strike summit held by the Fred Hampton Leftists YouTube channel. And it was basically mapping out, it was like a conference, via Zoom, and, a summit. And basically, the 8 regular Fred Hampton Leftist members who work on that channel, they hosted a ton of events of different kinds, by different topics, but all pretty much aiming toward a central goal, which was a general strike in the U.S. Strikes are happening all over the United States right now, massive strikes, but the mainstream media really isn't covering it. I'm not surprised or anything, I'm just saying. But they're a big problem. They're a big problem, for all of us in our lives, because they kind of are shaping public opinion and propagandizing us. Excuse me, my hair's itchy. So, my thing is, fuck them. Fred Hampton Leftists it's led by a couple of nice guys named Compton J or CJ, Nick Cruz, aka MMA Socialist. They're incredible. They're young, brilliant black men who have a vision, man, and they named their channel after Fred Hampton because of his vision when he was alive and in the Black Panthers. They may be changing their name soon because Fred Hampton Jr., some trolls that have been bedeviling them went to Fred Hampton Jr. and made false claims, and so they're gonna, change it, but the message remains the same. The song remains the same, and it's a vital one. They would like to unite all the unions if possible, so all the striking people already in play could unite and then other workers across the country would join them. And it could be big, it could be huge and unprecedented. I'm not sure. I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic, but you know, I can't underestimate the ability of um, online pundits who claim to be leftists, who are really, conservative Democrats, but they're younger and they act and look ostensibly hipsterish, and they're arrogant fucks, and they basically every time there's a move for change or a move for something like this to force the government to do the things that they need to do, a lot of which they promised when the president was elected. Now, of course, those weren't originally in his platform, but those are things that they took from Bernie Sanders as a concession to, kick him out, and he just kind of let it happen. And unfortunately, as always, he was hoodwinked and allowed it. Um, and none of those things have happened, or anything that the so-called progressive Congress people ran on, like AOC and her ilk. They ran on these issues that they were going to do their absolute best to make them happen and raise a ruckus, so to speak, in Washington, as she put it herself. And they've done nothing but cater to the rich and powerful and be shills for the mainstream Democratic Party. So they're Democrats. I'm never going to vote for a Democrat again. I've never voted for a Republican. I'm only going to vote third party. I'm done. So, the thing is, uh, these online faux left trolls have infested channels like Fred Hampton Leftists, and they tried to cause trouble on the Fred Hampton Leftist Summit. Fortunately, they were tamped down, and their negativity did not in any way diminish from the incredible positive energy of seeing so many leftist voices that I respect and enjoy watching and listening to, as well as a bunch of people I was not as familiar with, talk about all kinds of different things that would be necessary and in place to have a general strike, and how it would be administered, and like I said, uniting unions and bringing in other workers. Now is kind of the time, because of so many people that have kind of refused to go back to work and work for unlivable wages. Congress had a chance to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour a few months ago, which would have helped me because my base pay is kind of low because I do commissions. It really would have helped me and a lot of Americans. And it's really the bare minimum that we need. Unfortunately, AOC and the Progressive Caucus, they didn't use the leverage of their votes. They let the establishment folk railroad them and run over them, and then they just kind of basically deflected or used causes to make themselves look hip and cool and revolutionary when nothing could be further from the truth. So those people won't help us. They can help us, but they won't. None of them approved the Medicare for All march, also attended by a strong leftist presence from across the spectrum, and it took place in 50 cities across America. Again, no mainstream media coverage, but nothing from Bernie Sanders, AOC, or all these people. No, like good luck, or I wish I could be there, or solidarity, comrade. Well, they'll see, they're going to say something like that. And it's kind of pathetic. There have been a number of things. I'll go into them again another time, maybe when I do an all political video, which it seems like this is becoming. But I'm just letting you know, I took part in this summit. I mean, I wasn't on the panel or anything, but I was in the chats and giving feedback and donated $5. That's all I could do. And I support these people. And there are several that are being attacked constantly from the right because they're to the left of people who call themselves left. The Overton window. It's getting to where the Republicans on the right are going off the fucking cliff, and the liberals are past the middle and headed that way. And then leftists are over here, left behind. Like America was left behind last year during the pandemic. The only country in the world with no UBI, no, so what it's called? Yeah, the, income, permanent, no monthly income, no Medicare for all during a global pandemic. They were the only country in the world that did that. No reimbursement or pay or support for workers financially. Every other country in the world did this. When I say country, I mean every other industrialized, developed country. So, yeah, I mean, China gave their citizens health care and money to survive. Japan, even the fucking United Kingdom. Disturbing. When I say fucking, I mean they're extremely right-wing government. In all of Europe has done this. It's mandatory for survival. And now the biggest, most populous single country in the world, maybe, I don't know, maybe Africa is, but that's a continent. So never mind. The biggest, most, densely populated country in the world, and the richest in the history of Earth, said screw you to its citizens. And it was hard enough to get a $1,600, stimulus. I mean, Trump, who I detest. I mean, Trump gave me $1,800. This new fella, he only gave me $1,400. So yeah, an ideology is not going to pay my bills or put food on my table. So but I don't support those people anyway. But he made that as a campaign promise. Of course, those are made to be broken. And yeah, no forgiveness of student loan debt, no federal jobs guarantee, no cannabis legalization and decriminalization, and forgiveness and letting people out of the prisons for it. All of that was kind of on the table on that platform, sort of. That Mr. B, appropriated to touch Bernie's base, and Bernie just played right into their hands, and he's been totally neutralized. And all the others, even Tulsi Gabbard, who was by far the most left-wing candidate last year, who I donated to during the primaries. I voted for Bernie in the primaries. But I donated to Tulsi. I followed her carefully, and she just kept getting more and more radical left. And then she threw her hands up in the air and endorsed Biden before the race was over. And now she's kind of veering right and making some ridiculous statements, totally contradictory to what she stated her ideology to be for the last 5 or 6, 7 years. So, basically another sellout. How the mighty fall. So I'm disillusioned. I feel about Bernie and Tulsi the way I do about maybe ex-girlfriends, ex-wives. I just avoid contact. I don't pay attention to what they're doing because I just might get angry or depressed. So that's how I am with those people. Fortunately, Bernie's really doing nothing, so there's not really much to look at. But Yeah, I didn't mean to turn this into a political screed, but there's a few channels that I'd like to encourage you all to check out. If you are on the left, if you're even if you're a Democrat, the vast majority of Democrat voters who are proudly Democrats are right wingers, whether they realize it or not. They may um, want to address some social issues. A lot of it, though, is culture wars, and a lot of it has nothing to do with socioeconomic problems and climate change and unprecedented income inequality, racial inequality. Um, they pay lip service, but they're not really doing anything. And the leaders they worship, like I said, like the Progressive Caucus, does nothing. So, just talks good, talks, a good game in tweets, and then folds and votes against all of our interests, regardless of party, except for the 1%, the oligarchs, the billionaires, and even probably a lot of the millionaires. Um, Ironically, it was Bernie who raised worldwide consciousness about this problem in America. And for that, I'll always respect him and revere the old Bernie. But he's gone. He shed that skin, and I guess he's going to stick with this whatever capitulation till his grave. Um, so we all need that. So anyway, if you're watching, or if you're even a Republican and it's not too crazy a radical right winger, not a total like Nazi or something. And I don't think all Republicans and right wingers are Nazis. But you know, uh, events like this General Strike Summit are an outreach to those people, those kind of people too, because we have a lot of the same needs for ourselves and our families. So Medicare for all, student loan forgiveness, federal job guarantee, maybe stimulus checks, you know, um, all these things, cannabis decriminalization, so they don't go to prison, because I know damn well tons of Republicans smoke weed, because one of them actually put on the floor a bill to decriminalize and legalize cannabis federally. A Republican did this just this week, first Republican ever. So if they're doing it, and the big guy, so to speak, is poised to veto it, and still, miming these tired um, war on drugs talking points, uh, it just may never happen. Not in this regime. Um, and I don't know if we'll ever get a regime left to the left of this one. I mean, this one was, you know, to the right of Clinton, and that's pretty bad. And these cats make Jimmy Carter, look like you know, a saintly warrior for humanity. Maybe he is. I don't know. Uh, but he's the last president that had a moral compass of any kind. We have one, not so long ago who faked it really well, who I voted for and supported and gave money to, and he let all of us down. Whether you still like him or not, most people worship him, except hardcore Republicans and far leftists like me. But his smooth talking, it didn't help the wars and the just the ruin that he left this country in. Didn't make it go down any easier. And the next guy, who everyone hates, pretty much unanimously, even some Republicans, uh, he actually has had policies to the left of Biden on a lot of things. So that's scary. I mean, he ran to the left of Hillary in 2016. He promised, we're going to get out of the Middle East. We're going to pull out the troops. We might have Medicare for all or something like it. He made a ton of promises that were part of his faux populism, and that's why he won. Hillary wasn't promising any of that shit. She conceded a little bit of Bernie's platform when she cheated him out of the nomination, and she didn't exactly peddle it very passionately. You got to remember, this is the woman who had one of the early debates became livid with fury. This woman is unhinged. She became livid with fury and started raging like fucking Hitler or Mussolini. She's like, Medicare for all will never, ever happen. And she's trying to tell the audience, thinking they're stupid, that'll never happen because, Republicans will obstruct it or we need incremental change and blah, 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 blah. But you know why it'll never happen? Because people like her are going to make damn sure it never happens. So anyway, I hope we can bring together as many people with common human needs as possible and make a dent in this horrific system that's killing all of us, killing the planet and all its creatures. Wow. Okay, so I'll be a little brief, or I'll try to be briefer. With the next event I attended online, a Zoom convention called FarmerCon. This was FarmerCon 16. And FarmerCon is a con devoted to the love of Philip Jose Farmer, fans of Philip Jose Farmer, who is my favorite fiction writer, I have to say. He's not my favorite number one writer. He's kind of vies. William Burroughs is kind of my all-around favorite writer. And Steve Gerber is my favorite comic book writer, but he's of such stature, I throw him in with those guys. So, Farmer's up there. Farmer's been with me since I was 14. And, in 2004, I discovered an online community that was devoted to his works and expanding his Walt Newton family theories. I felt really at home, and I started working on expanding some of those theories too and speculating. And a lot of them actually came into print, not mine, but my buddies in the book Myths for the Modern Age, edited by Win Scott Eckert. Then kind of Farmer passed, and Win and some other guys had gained the rights from his estate to publish derivative works from his works. And some of them, like Win, and Chris Carey, have even gone on to write, the real, not the licensed characters that exist within Farmer's Walt Newton family concept. Like Tarzan and not so much Doc Savage. They haven't done any one of him. That's always a contentious property. Tarzan, the Avenger. I'm forgetting a bunch of the other ones, but Win and company have done some great stories, authorized stories, canonical stories, and this has kind of led to Win doing, helping spearhead the Edgar Rice Burroughs universe, published by ERB, and Christopher Carey, a guy I've known since about 2005, 2006. Spent some nice time talking to over the years. He's become the head of all that. Wow. I mean, that's pretty incredible. I mean, it may not be incredible to a lot of people who feel like the Tarzan properties said all it needs to say, and because I personally feel that way about the James Bond property. But it's a big deal in the sense that ERB was once a giant and thriving bastion of intellectual properties, and was very profitable, obviously, because Tarzan is, I'm changing the lighting a little bit, and because, Tarzan obviously is an icon, and the first maybe 2/3 of this century was a huge best-selling character. Not so much in the last generation or so. Not so much for Zoomers or millennials, and not as much for Gen Xers, really, though some of us like me did grow up with it, and I didn't delve as passionately into it as people like Win and Chris, but I love all that mythology, and I love Walt Newton family's concept created by Farmer, which basically posits that all of these cult heroes and villains and characters from classic literature and genre fiction that they're all genealogically by blood related on this massive family tree. Now, there's a lot of people who hate the Walden Newton concept, and they hate Farmer's two allegedly real biographies of Tarzan and Doc Savage. But screw them. I don't care. I enjoy those books. They had a huge effect on me. Doc Savage's Apocalyptic Life was my first Farmer on my 14th birthday, and I was immediately hooked. And I like all of his non-Walden Newton works as well, which there are many. He is probably the most underrated science fiction writer of the 20th century. He was the first to blatantly put human sexuality and even alien sexuality squarely into science fiction. His 1952 story, The Lovers, later expanded into a novel in the 60s, was just groundbreaking. And he won an award for a promising newcomer, a Hugo, right? Or Nebula. I held it in my hands when I was at his house, so I better get it right. It's a Hugo. And watch it turn out to be a Nebula. But anyway, somewhere there's a picture of me holding that thing. I did get to meet him before he passed. He was very elderly, not well, but it was still an honor and a thrill. And so my buddies who were doing the Walden Newton stuff, they were there with me. Around 2010, 2011, when I began working for my ex-wife's website, I drifted away from the Walden Newton things. I was trying to do a webcomic based on a lot of those concepts, which had various alternate titles. Iron Creek was the main title. And I found some artists. I did the designs. I didn't want to do the art. And stuff like this is one of the reasons, but I had some artists who were really good. Adriana Palka, Matt Mundorf, and those were the two main ones. And then we shifted gears to doing this thing called Conclaves, which was a revamped version of the Defenders material that I sent to Marvel in an official proposal in 2006. And it wasn't picked up. Some of my ideas were because you sign a non-disclosure form. Basically, that company then owns all of your ideas that you've put forth. So I didn't make up any new characters, of course. I mildly redesigned some existing characters, one of which it's unmistakably been used, the Valkyrie. Not the Valkyrie in the movies, but Brunhilde, the blonde Valkyrie. On Facebook, I'm going to post side by side pictures. Bill Sienkiewicz loved my design. I mean, that was an honor, and I guess someone else did too, since they were like, "Yeah, well, we own this. This is cool. Time to give her pants and change her, lacy shoes to, leggings with a big thing on the knee, metal, and just various. Yeah, I mean, it's almost identical. Anyway, that's the way it is. I knew that was what it was going to be like going in, so that's fine. It's just it discourages people from wanting to submit. But then again, Marvel doesn't take open submissions anymore. But and for years they didn't until Bill Jemas became president. And so for a number of years, and even after he left, Joe Quesada was the editor-in-chief. So he was still taking open submissions, and I was excited. So my then girlfriend helped me prepare a package and treatments and stuff, and I drew out all the designs and stuff like that. And I was talking to people who were big wheels then, mainly in the Marvel Knights line, Axel Alonso and Warren Simons, who I believe was editing Daredevil at the time. And I wanted it to be a Marvel Knights comic, if it got picked up, because the Defenders was kind of a dead property by that time. Marvel seemed like they were ashamed of it. Now, I'm talking about the pre-Netflix MCU shows Defenders. The Defenders has now been, redefined in a different direction, at least in public consciousness. Marvel still struggles once in a while to throw out a few short-lived series or miniseries around the original concept. regarding the original concept, I was a freak. The Defenders is my favorite super team. I own every single appearance up to not just issue, but every single appearance, except maybe one or two. I keep finding more. Up to about 1992, maybe 1991. I stopped collecting mainstream Marvel in the early 90s until 2000. I began collecting because Grant Morrison was doing new X-Men. And the whole line got wonderful for a while, for about 5 years. But I digress, as usual. But yeah, and Axel Alonso, of course, went on to be the editor-in-chief. One of the guys I tried to get advice from or talk to was C.B. Cebulski, and he seemed cool at first, but then he was a bit off-putting, and now he's the editor-in-chief, go figure. So, I got burnt out on the whole Marvel thing. I mean, not only coming off of that experience, but then working with the Comic Book Artists Guild for a number of years, which was concurrent with me working on the web comics. And I had my story, Snow Leopard, published, a comic book story. Very, very short run, very rare book. I don't know if it's worth a lot, but it's very rare. I'm proud of it. I would have done some things different, but I was writing and designing it to fit into a certain audience, a certain concept, which was like American manga styled stories. There's my phone. But anyway, after Snow Leopard, I went full bore into the, I went full bore into that stuff, and I was still using a lot of into the web comics, and I was still using those concepts in Iron Creek. And then I shifted gears and began doing one called Conclaves, which I think, as I mentioned, was basically my Defenders material that I had planned out, some of which I'd sent to Marvel, a lot of which I had in my head, mapped out way ahead. And I re-engineered it, with the characters' names changing and various other things. I think overall it's pretty good, and I look back and see that some of the characters that I was trying to do analogs of, I didn't necessarily come up with the ideal name or design to let you know who it was without being litigious. So I don't know. I doubt I'll ever revisit Conclaves. However, I think I'm going to borrow some of my own characters from it and use in Flicker Street, just as I've done with my comic I mapped out in 2002, Desolation Falls, and what else have I cannibalized of my own? Yeah, a few things. Snow Leopard, but Snow Leopard is meta in the Flicker Street universe. In other words, in there, she is a manga comics character. So she's not actually a living, breathing character, but that's an important plot and why that comic was made in the story. And doesn't really have to do with a character like me drawing it or the Comic Book Artists Guild. It's much deeper. So anyway, so I got her, and I did retain the copyright on her. I wouldn't have done that story. So here we come full circle many years later, and I'm from 2014 on to now. I've been pouring my heart back into Flicker Street. Like I said, incorporating these other things from the periods when I wasn't working on it, and trying to improve things and writing a definitive backstory document, which took me, years to finish, and which now I'm so anal retentive. I keep saying I'm going to post it on my website any day. It's ready to post, but I was trying to do some illustrations to go with it, and then my hands started fucking with me, and I don't know. I mean, that would help sell it, but maybe I won't. Maybe I'll use an old illustration that's not too terrible, because I don't render my characters the way I did for many years. I try to make them more realistic / impressionistic, because they are live in my head, and I want to convey that to the audience. And one compliment I get a lot, especially from artists, is that their eyes, they seem very alive, and that's a huge compliment, especially coming from some of the great artists who've told me that. But anyway, I haven't churned one of those out in a while, unfortunately, since Zap Valley was my last one. I did a whole video about her. Um, so what does this all mean? Well, I'm best friends with Sean Lee Levin, and he um, was still involved with all of this, and he published some crossover, documenting crossover novels, Crossovers Expanded, 2 volumes, which were follow up to Win Scott Eckert's Crossovers, A Secret Chronology of the World, which basically amassed all of Win's chronologies from online and that he'd been working on and accumulating. And it was basically an expansion of the Walt Newton universe. And so, before it became published, he called it the crossover universe because it was a bit more removed. I mean, the Walt Newton universe was at the core of it, but it was so, many degrees of separation that it kind of was its own thing. So all of the Walt Newton universe exists in the crossover universe, but not all the crossover universe, exists in the Walt Newton universe. So, I'd lost touch with some of my buddies, and I didn't want to do pastiche anymore ever again. I didn't want to make them feel like I was dissing them for not doing it. I think I mentioned some of this on a video earlier. My opinions have softened a little since that video. I wasn't really angry, but I was just very vehement that this is the direction I need to go in. And I've always been a live and let guy, live and let live guy like that, and so has Win Eckert, and I appreciate that. So, this past weekend, there was a 2-day thing. There were some online panels, there were some recorded videos, readings of various works of Farmer and works related to Farmer. And Friday and Saturday from 5 p.m. on, there was a Zoom hangout. So it was just like we were all hanging out like we did at the hotels and stuff. Well, different places. The 2 FarmerCons I attended, one was 2007. We hung out at a restaurant. Then we hung out at the farmer's house all day. That was incredible. The next one I attended was 2014, and we hung out at whatever hotel that was. Unfortunately, I was under a lot of stress at the time. The heat was killing me, and I don't know. I was kind of weak, and I was kind of out of it. I was kind of like, I didn't know I was heading towards some kind of breakdown again. That didn't come for like another year or so, but it was definitely, my faculties were not sharp, and I know my friends there were worried about me, and I don't blame them for kind of writing me off if they needed to, and that's fine. But anyway, I couldn't attend Saturday because I had a very, very long phone conversation with a person that ties into that huge thing I mentioned at the beginning. Very productive, very nice. So Sunday, this person was occupied during the evening, and so I got on there about 7, and I stayed on till 3 a.m. So 8 hours. I took 2 hours off in the middle there, so 6 hours altogether, and I was with it till the bitter end. And I got reacquainted with most of these guys, and it was really wonderful. Not all of them I got to interface with or make a comment to back and forth. There were a lot of people on the Zoom, and we're all like excitable geeks, and so it's hard to, to get everyone to even be heard sometimes. At least the first part I went to, which was for 2 hours. I didn't say much. I just said this is what I've been up to, and that was it. Shield for my eBay page, eBay store. Anyway, Saturday night was totally different. The first 2 hours I was on, when I came back after 2 hours away from it, and went on at, I guess, 9 to 3, there were less people, and there were people I didn't know that I was getting to know for the first time that I really liked and connected with. So, basically we talked about everything under the sun, Walt Newton, the Walt Newton concept, Farmer's works, Farmer's themes, Farmers critics and haters, wins critics and haters, and old days on our Yahoo groups. I used to own a Wald Newton Yahoo group for Wald Newton. I just said that, as did Win. And, we went back over all that and reminisced and talked about, our anecdotes about Farmer and really a lot about Farmer. And then, but a lot of other things too. I mean, we veered briefly into kind of politics with the state of the world. And at least 3 or 4 of the people on there, especially Win and a young lady named Adam Mudman, Cezerndy, I think is their last name. The 3 of us were, and Keith Howell, the moderator of the panel, I think he was. The 3 of us and maybe him were definitely in accord with what I was saying. And by this time, Win was a little intoxicated. I wish I had been, but and he was really open and really like pouring it out. And I was like remembering all the great times we had together before. We used to be really close friends. And it was nice. I kind of felt a vibe, like connection, like reading each other's minds on certain things. And that felt good. So I hope to talk to Win more often going forward. Keith Howell, like I said, is a moderator. He's an artist who has illustrated a ton of farmer related stuff. And then the covers to Sean's 2 books. Great guy. I had never interfaced with him in reality, just comments on posts. I don't think I'd ever even texted with him. And it had been a while. And it turned out we liked a lot of the same movies for a lot of the same reasons. And it really surprised me. And we had a lot more in common than I thought. And like all these guys, he is incredibly knowledgeable. I mean, you're talking about a brain trust here. Of pop culture, geek culture, literature, film, the arts, comics. It's amazing. We all talked about comics for a while. We talked about the MCU for a while. That was a good conversation. They were all good conversations. So, besides those 3, people, and Adam did friend me after the thing on Facebook, and I was going to friend her anyway. I friended a couple of the other guys. A guy named Rick Brett Schneider. He's an encyclopedia of comics. We also talked about the DC Universe shows too, and Titans and Doom Patrol. Our thoughts on those and our thoughts on the Doom Patrol comics. So anyway, yeah, and one other guy named Chuck Welch. So there's a few people I friended that I'd not friended ever before. As a result, I saw Rick Lay, who I knew from years past, just a major important new pulp voice and scholar, and he's done everything from Doc Savage to The Shadow to spaghetti westerns and all kinds of incredible theories and pastiches, other people that I already previously knew, I didn't really interface much. A little with Chris Carey, not so much with Paul Spateri, who I've always been fond of, and he had to go relatively early that second round. He lives in Britain, and he's my height. That's kind of cool. And not many are. And John Small, and we didn't really get to interface either. But Frank Schildener, another old favorite of mine, who I follow a little bit more than some of the others on Facebook and vice versa. He and I, he was swept into the film discussion too. Yeah, me, him, and Keith Howell and Adam, the 4 of us had this incredible Lars von Trier conversation for about 20 minutes. That was incredible. And none of them but me had seen House That Jack Built, but they'd seen everything else, even some I hadn't seen. And it was just fascinating getting our different views. I mean, we also had a big talk about Suspiria and all the 3 mothers and films and their source materials. So yeah, it was great. By the end, I felt, I felt good. I felt energized. I felt my, brain was pumping. I wasn't inclined to dip back into the pastiche thing myself to render anything. But my interest in what these guys are doing now with it has been kind of reawakened. I couldn't afford to support and buy all of their projects over the years. And to be fair, to be honest, I didn't like all of them equally, some more than others. And I have to kind of, you know, I have to be discerning, because I'm poor. Um, but I supported them closely, for like 5, 6, 7 years. And then the last, like, 8 or 9 years, not so much. So I appreciated them inviting me despite all that, since I hadn't seen any of them since 2015, except Sean, 2014, except Sean. So to wrap up, that was a great experience. And then following up, I got to have um, some really nice time yesterday with this person I'm alluding to. So, and probably will tonight as well. So, have something to look forward to. And it's nice to have something to look forward to again. I don't want to be the same guy who wrote, the crash site. I've crashed, and I'm dispatches from the crash site, and appeals to former partners and private videos, which I accidentally made public. One of them I accident briefly. And the soul bearing. I haven't done any of those in a while. If things continue to be positive, I'm going to keep it close to the vest. I don't want to jinx anything, and I could have a whole new future in front of me, one that's very beautiful and fulfilling. And even if this doesn't go through, I think I still will. I've kind of finally come out of that. I've come out of that phase of grieving my ex-fiance. I'm just not interested in her anymore. I mean, I love the person she was. She's an attractive woman, intellectual woman, talented woman, but she has an array of other negative traits that I didn't really catch until later, after she beat me over the head with all of mine, and I was just like, please, I'm sorry, come back to me, and being masochistic as often am. And but after I witnessed some of her material and commentary on her relationships on her new favorite online hangout, which isn't I don't think she'll ever come back to Facebook. I read those, and something kind of snapped. That was like May, and I immediately got off that platform. It's not big enough for the two of us, and I haven't looked back. I've still had some pain over the summer. What's happened recently has happened at a good time. So anyway, that was kind of what I've been up to. So I haven't watched a huge amount of movies in the last 2 weeks. I did watch The House That Jack Built rewatch last night on Hulu. I saw it theatrically. It played in Charlotte for one day, one day, one date, and I was there, and that was the uncut version. Then it was on Blu-ray and DVD for the cut version. I haven't seen that. And then finally the uncut Blu-ray came out, but it's on my long list to pick up eventually. So they have the uncut version on Hulu, and it's really uncut. So if you want to see it for free, get some access to Hulu and make up your mind for yourself. It is a rough go. I mean, I love tense movies and movies that make me feel dread and shock me and make me think and feel and contemplate. And this one is a heavy one. I think it's Lars' best written film. I think it's a masterpiece. It's like the main character is a serial killer played by Matt Dillon. I would call it a serial killer epic. It's 2.5 hours long, and it really, with all the moving parts to it added together, it takes you a lot of places, a lot of them unpleasant, a lot of them kind of amusing, darkly amusing, and a lot of them kind of awe-inspiring and very thought-provoking. So for those who can handle extreme cinema and like intelligent extreme cinema, I I would definitely recommend House that Jack built. It is a motherfucker. So anyway, I don't know who is chinging on me here. So yeah, so that's it. And get her here. And I'll be signing off. Take care, everyone. Have a good holiday.